I was visiting in the home of one of our senior adult couples. And in their living room was a card table. On that card table was a jigsaw puzzle with what looked to me like 1,000,000 pieces. Only the borders were done. So there were dozens of random puzzle pieces scattered across that tabletop. And they insisted, before I left, that I connect one of those puzzle pieces to what they had already done. Well, after an embarrassingly long period of time, I was finally able to do it. You see, I'm not a fan of jigsaw puzzles. I guess I just don't have the patience for it. I prefer the preschool puzzles. You know, the kind with 6 to 10 big wooden pieces that are easily connected within a frame. Now that's my kind of puzzle. I can work those all day long and enjoy every minute of it. Well, day by day, this couple sat at their table and they sipped tea while working on that puzzle. And as they worked, they would chat about world news and about the weather. They would share updates about their neighbors and their children and their grandchildren. They reminisced about their courtship decades earlier. And they expressed love and commitment to one another. Well, a couple of months later, I returned, and the puzzle was nearly complete. Only a few disconnected pieces remained. But I could clearly see the picture they had been working on. Do you know what it was? It was a church. It was a church. And I had a piece in that church. Well, I later found out that everyone who stopped by their home had to do the same as I did. Whether it was other folks from the church or neighbors, friends, their children, family members, repairmen, caregivers, didn't matter who it was, they all had to stop long enough to connect a piece in that puzzle. So I suspect there were dozens and dozens of people who worked with them to connect those puzzle pieces. Well, our scripture text today reminds us of the connectedness between the early churches. This letter to the church at Corinth was an encouragement or an admonition that they needed to receive an offering for their impoverished brothers and sisters in the Jerusalem church. They were encouraged to do the same thing that the churches in Galatia had already done. You see, this tangible, visible expression of care was to remind all of them how they were connected through Jesus Christ. Now, this offering was to be regular, systematic. It was to be planned. It was to include everybody, rich and poor. And the writer of this Corinthian letter was almost threatening. The letter said, now, if you don't do it, then when I get there, it's going to be done. Now, I don't think any of your clergy are to that point yet, but we are almost to the point occasionally of saying, now, if you don't bring the offerings in, don't make us come and get it, because it ain't going to be pretty. Well, all joking aside, we do need to remember that one of the ways of showing our connectedness is through our giving. That tradition continues in the church today. Especially it continues in the United Methodist Church. Connectedness is not just a part of our polity, it's a part of our theology. It's the way we believe and practice our Christian faith. We believe strongly that God has called us in and through Jesus Christ to see Christ in others, to look at every man as our brother and every woman as our sister, to remember that we are connected. And that means we have a responsibility to one another and an accountability to one another. The United Methodist Church is a connectional church. We're not little empires concerned with our own well-being and our own success. The words that we speak, the liturgy of communion reminds us, if you listen carefully, that we are one with Christ, one with each other, and one in ministry to all the world. We are connected. The early Methodists recognized their covenant commitment to God and one another. One of the modern day evidences of connectedness is the work of UNCOR, the United Methodist Committee on Relief. Now, it seems this year we have been overwhelmed with news in our own country and around the world of the devastating effects of natural disasters and terrorist acts and violent crime. Everywhere we look, people are hurting, people are struggling. And we can talk all day about how we are praying for them and how we care about them and we're hurting with them and for them. But what do? Well, one of the things we can do is we can give to help ease their suffering. The United Methodist Committee on Relief is a very visible, continuing presence wherever people are hurting. I read recently that over $7 million has been given by UNCOR for hurricane relief, and another $2 million for global health projects. The United Methodist Church Bishop in Puerto Rico, Hector Ortiz, has spoken of the heartbreaking situation there. But the church in Puerto Rico is open and serving because of UNCOR, because of your prayers, your gifts through this church. We may not see that on the evening news. We may not read much about that on the internet, on some sites. But it's happening today. It's happening because of you and others like you who care enough to give, who remember that we're connected. The same thing is happening in Texas. The same thing is happening in Florida. You are there through your prayers, through your gifts, through this church on this one corner. It's amazing, isn't it? What one little church can do, multiplied hundreds and thousands of times. And we couldn't do that on our own. There's no way that Muncie Church could ever make a dent in the situations of the world where people are hurting, except through our connectedness. Now, this is true even in our own church. Last year, we began a new ministry called Care Exchange. It used to be called Muncie Service Group, but we revamped it, and now we include multi-generational groups who connect with our homebound senior adults. It's an amazing thing that involves children, youth, young adults who are visiting and contacting and listening and loving and caring for people who often are tempted to feel forgotten even by the church that they've been members of for decades. It's a great thing. It's made possible because of your giving. One of these senior adults, I learned a few months ago, I asked the family, I said, what can I bring as just a token of care? And I was surprised to learn that this particular senior adult lady likes chocolate milkshakes. Well, the first time I visited, I took a chocolate milkshake. I stopped by Chick-fil-A and got one, and I mean, the drive from Chick-fil-A to her home was the longest drive I have ever. I mean, it was in that cup with the plastic dome with the straw and the whipped cream and the cherry on top. I mean, I seriously did some praying along the way that God would help me not to pull off the road and just eat that chocolate milkshake and tell her nothing about it. Well, it was pure torture to have to sit there and watch her drink that chocolate milkshake. So I determined that the next time I'd bring one for me too. After all, it's not fair for somebody to have to drink a chocolate shake by themselves. It's just not right. I'm sure there's something in the Bible about that. Look it up for yourselves. So care exchange is a wonderful thing. It benefits those who care probably more than those who are cared for. When we talk about connection, we think of the ministry of faith communities in and through our own melting pot here. We think about our connection to Northside Elementary School and the lives of students who are being touched and teachers as well. That little insert in your update today, please take time to read that. It's a wonderful reminder of just a few of the ways that we connect with others through our hands-on involvement, our prayers, our giving, our care. And thank you, Brad, for being here and reminding us that we are connected. We have a wonderful part in your ministry, and you are there doing work that we couldn't do, but we thank you for doing that so faithfully. Tom Coram over here heads up this Care Exchange ministry, keeps us all organized and on track, and we thank you for that, Tom. And also the communion bearers to our homebound members, and on we could go of all the ways that we are able to connect together through service and prayer and giving. We are connected, aren't we? We need to remember that. And we need to do everything within our power to strengthen this connection, not only with our church and with our community, but with people all over the world. They too are our brothers and our sisters. Dr. Fred Craddock taught for many years at Emory University's Candler School of Theology. He told the story of how he and Nettie, his wife, became friends with a minister in Chautauqua, New York. This minister had no arms. He was born without arms. Fred and Nettie were amazed at what this man could do on his own. They sat at the table and heard his story, and they told this minister how amazed, astounded they were at what he was able to accomplish without assistance. And yet he said, well, to be honest with you, I still need help with some things. He said, I'm able to help other people in ways they don't realize, but I need help too. I can't do everything on my own by myself. And he said, I learned that lesson early in life. He said, when I was born, he said, my mother and I had a very close relationship. She did everything for me. She fed me, she bathed me, she clothed me. She was there for me every time I needed anything. But he said, I was getting to be a bigger boy. And he said, one day my mother came into my bedroom and she laid out my clothes on the bed. And she said, now dress yourself. And he said, I looked at her with this look of astonishment and said, but Mama, what do you mean dress myself? You know I can't. And she said, you can if you want to and if you keep trying at it. She said, I may not always be there for you, son. I may not always be around, and you're going to have to learn to do some things by yourself. And she said, there are other people in this family. And she said, there are other people outside this family who can help you. And the older you get, the more you're going to have to realize that you can help them and they can help you. You're going to have to swallow your pride and your ego and get over your embarrassment and ask for and receive help. She said, you've got a lot of brothers and sisters out there that you don't know about, and a lot of mothers and fathers out there you don't know about. And with that, she walked out his bedroom door and shut the door. He said he kicked and screamed and cried and cursed and begged, and he accused her of being unloving. What he didn't know till many years later is that his mother was on the other side of that door, her heart breaking, sobbing, weeping. But he said, I learned to do a lot of things for myself. And I learned to ask for and receive help. He said, I learned the lesson, that hard lesson my mother taught me that day. It took me many years to learn that we are connected to one another. We need each other. You need me and I need you. And there's a hurting world out there that needs us, and we need them. A critic once said to William Sloane Coffin,